Welcome to Autism Knows No Borders, a podcast where people connected to autism inspire change and build community. Together with the Global Autism Project, I'm your host, Rachel Harmon, a professional with over a decade of experience in the field of autism services, outreach, and advocacy. How can companies create a neurodiverse-friendly working environment? And what should autistic employees look for in a job? Whether you're an employer or a job seeker, you'll want to listen to this episode with Grant Harris. Grant Harris is an autistic self-advocate, consultant, speaker, and author. He helps companies achieve organizational excellence through neurodivergent practices. This episode is part 2 of our conversation, and we discuss common mistakes employers make when trying to be neuroinclusive, practical accommodations for neurodivergent employees, the positive impact of neurodiversity on workplace culture, business gains from neurodiverse workforces, first steps for companies wanting to become neuroinclusive, and tips for neurodivergent job seekers. In this episode, discover what's possible when you foster inclusion. And now, I present you, Grant Harris. Okay, Grant, let's talk about your professional work. When you're providing training to companies, to employers to implement these neurodivergent practices, what are some common mistakes that you'll see when they're trying to be neurodiverse friendly?
Well, first and foremost, I said that I train, and technically that's what it is, but I look at it more as facilitation. Training is, I'm going to be sage on a stage. I'm going to give Rachel everything I know. Here it is. And Rachel, you should absorb it and you should be good because I've trained you. And then therefore you should be better at the end of that training, which is usually not the case. So I facilitate learning, which is more of an experience, number one, than just an event. And it is usually based in cross communication, role play, scenario, reflection, these type of things to actually move you towards getting 1% better. So your question about common mistakes with organizations or departments or people who are trying to be more neuro-inclusive. One, they think binary. It's us versus them, meaning I'm normal, they're not. Meaning the way I think is right and good and true, and the way they think is not right or good or true. That's one. Two is that they need to be fixed somehow. Okay, they have something. How do we fix it? Instead of they are something, how do we work with that thing that is? You see the shift in the mindset there?
Yeah.
Rachel, you have something. How do I fix it? That puts me in a position of authority and power that I don't need anything to be fixed. There's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with you. And whatever is wrong with you, one, it's wrong. And two, there's no inherent good benefit. And three, it needs to change to morph to what I want it to be, which is the opposite of neuro-inclusive practices. You change the question and the mindset to, instead of something that the person has, it's something that the person is. You are this way. You've always been this way. You may not have always known it, but you do now. So that's a level of respect and self-awareness right there. And then versus saying, okay, this person is this way. How do we fix them to be more like me or us? Well, how do we meet them in the middle of the road? Meaning, how do we take advantage in a good way, take advantage of all of the things that we feel like are a disadvantage? So you take each one of those things and you flip it on its head. Okay, they need structure and we're in an unstructured environment. Okay, well, how can we take the structure and apply it to one piece of the unstructured to make the whole better? And if you do that over time and you extrapolate that, that's how, one, that neurodistinct employee feels better about themselves and performs better. And two, that's how the organization becomes more healthy and performs better over time. So the binary of us versus them, they need to be fixed. The third thing I would say is that this is an initiative, or this is a thing that we do in a moment in time to make all the other things better, which again is the opposite of neuroinclusive practices. It's not an initiative. It's not a thing that we launch on day one, and then by day 30, it's all going to be different. It's all going to be better. Everything will be good. Everything will be right. That's not how it happens. So it's an iterative journey. It's an iterative process. There's ideation, there's pivoting, there's trial and error, there's practice, and it's an ongoing journey. So those are three mistakes that I see with how organizations approach this work, because I like to work in threes. Also, my autistic nature, I don't like odd numbers. The only odd number that I like is 5, and that's my favorite number. It's the best number in the world. It's the only odd number that I like. But when I am making a choice or making a decision or giving options to people, I like to work in threes. And that's a psychological thing. I'm a psychologist by trade. The human brain works best with things that come in threes or sevens, which is part of the reason phone numbers are the way that they are. And part of the reason that you have a good, better, best, you have a gold, silver, bronze. That's how the brain works. So I like to work in threes.
Got it. So what are some practical tips that you give when thinking about the hiring process, for example? So can look at maybe the hiring process and then, the training process on the job, and then how do we keep that employee happy and productive?
Yeah. So you're really talking about attraction and retainment. How do you attract, attain, and then retain? So attracting comes from a branding perspective, and that comes from language. And using neuroinclusive language to represent your brand or your organization is highly important. So, for example, in a company's copy or in their mission statement or in their values, you can allude to the understanding and the fact that you appreciate the way that different people operate. You didn't say anything about a brain. You didn't say anything about a diagnosis. You didn't say anything about anything negative. You just put out that you appreciate and understand that people operate differently, and that's welcomed in your environment.
It's kind of like, if you know, you know.
Yeah. So branding yourself and using neuroinclusive language is one way from an external perspective for attracting. So attaining is, I want Rachel to be an employee here. I'm trying to get her to come work for GTH Consulting. Well, how do I attain her? Well, one, you look for her and however they self-identify from a gender perspective, but you look for them in a different pool that you use standard-wise. So you expand the pool. You've been going to one pool forever. You've been going to one website. You've been going to one job board. You've been going to one source. Expand that source. And usually that source is the exact opposite of what you had already been doing. Meaning source 1 is red, then source 2 should be blue. It should be the opposite. Try something completely different. Look under a different rock than you have before from a talent perspective if you want to attain different talent. And then there are other things that go down the line, talking about the hiring process and onboarding, the way that you write a job description to avoid using derogatory language. And there are many ways to do that, but that's one way. So looking at a different pool than what you have been doing before. The third way to retain those employees is simple, but not always easy, is to ask them how you can retain them. So, Rachel, great. I found you in a place that I didn't see before. And I got you because I used neuroinclusive language and the hiring process felt good to you and you're here. So how do I keep you here? What do you like about being here? Why do you want to stay here? What made you come here versus the other 3 organizations that you could have gone to? Like, use your employees as your market research. The companies have focus groups all the time, and they ask these questions of these focus groups to understand their external market better. And they bring in people from the outside to say, well, how can I get my customer base to buy my product or service more? Well, you can apply that same theory and that same practice to your own people that are working for you. Have focus groups with your own people to say, why do you stay here? What makes it so great here?
Mm-hmm.
What about this culture? And you don't have to say neuro-inclusive, but there are ways to be more granular with that. But asking those questions, and specifically asking those questions of folks who have disclosed as being neurodistinct, take that opportunity to ask them. And that conversation looks different than other people who may be neurodistinct but haven't disclosed yet. But if they've disclosed and they're open and out and loud and proud about that, take that and use them to your advantage. Ask them what is so great about their role and what's not so great. How can it improve? How can it be better? Before they get to the point of a negative performance review or a reprimand or, last but not least, leaving the organization. So those are three ways that I suggest organizations, departments, HR leaders look at attracting, attaining, and retaining neurodistinct talent.
Got it. And what are some different accommodations that employees can ask for?
Oh, so many. In general, I talk about the conversation between there's a difference between an adjustment and an accommodation. And it's very simple. Adjustments are informal, accommodations are formal. Adjustments can happen on the fly, meaning like tomorrow. Accommodations usually take time because there's a process there. Adjustments do not and often are not in writing. Accommodations have to be in writing and should be in writing. So there's a difference between the two. I advocate for both. There should be adjustments. There should be accommodations. Your question was about accommodations. So in my personal life, throughout my work career, I have asked for camera choice, meaning the option to be on or off camera. I have asked for focus time, meaning the ability to have specific pockets of my day uninterrupted so that I could do that hyper focus on a task, a project. I have asked for the ability to batch my work. I work in batches, meaning I do 25-minute sprints. I work for 25 minutes and then I take a break. I work for another 25 minutes and then take a break. So to batch my work, because that's how I avoid burnout and that's how I'm most effective and efficient. And also like responding to emails or in terms of Slack or Teams communication. I have requested that I put out there, and it's not always just a request. A lot of times I put it out there and say, this is how I operate. To say, I don't always check my email. I check my email in batches. Like I'll check my email 3 times throughout the day, and you can expect a response from me within 24 hours. But I would lose my mind if I was just checking my email every 5 minutes. Some people do that, literally. Some people check their email multiple times every hour. And that's a time drain and a time suck for me and interrupts my flow of productivity. So these are some things that I have used in the past and that I suggest for people now. There are text to speech, there are headphones. These are things, visual audio accommodations. I haven't used those in my time, but there's certainly things that autistic people and neurodistinct people in general can ask for to help them improve their productivity on the job.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Can you give an example of what an adjustment could be?
Adjustments could be simple. The things that I've asked for, like the email deal is not an accommodation. That's never been formalized in writing. That's always been an adjustment. The focus time, that could be an adjustment. It's been an accommodation for me in the past, but that could be an adjustment. That doesn't have to be formalized. But others that could be standardized are flexible schedules, meaning if you work a 9 to 5 and you say, hey, can I work a 7 to 3 instead and still get the job done? That can be an adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Can I work from home 3 days a week instead of 2 days a week for whatever reason to that is more productive for you, that could be an adjustment. It could be an accommodation. It depends on the organization and how neuro-inclusive the organization is and how they decide to operate with their budget and their strategy. So most accommodations could be adjustments. Some adjustments could be accommodations.
Got
It
it.
depends on how you approach it, and it depends on the level of need of the individual, which is why all of this should be individualized. And it also depends on the access and the understanding that the organization has.
Hey, Rachel here. I'd like to thank one of our listeners, Izzy0826, for reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts. They said, "Thank you for having conversations that will help people grow and think beyond stigmas and misinformation. Thank you for the kind words. 5-star reviews like yours help us to continue spreading autism awareness and acceptance around the world. If, like Izzy, you're finding value in Autism Knows No Borders, please leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts." And now, back to the conversation. What are some of the gains that a company can experience?
Engagement increases, productivity increases, innovation increases, communication gets better and more effective and efficient. Some studies, and all of this information is fluid because studies are changing all the time. But you see in some studies 75% more engagement, 50% more productive, 70% less stress employees report. A big one is Gen Z. Over half of Gen Z currently identify as being neurodistinct, which means when they enter the workforce and brand loyalty is going to be very important, which is why upwards of 20% of the Fortune 500 organizations are actively recruiting or projected to be actively recruiting neurodistinct talent by 2027, which in reality, 2027 is already here. So that's from a human capital perspective. When you look at financial impact, so bottom line, and I talk about this in my work, is that I am here to help organizations harness the power of neurodiverse and neurodistinct talent for a better bottom line. So you have reduced absenteeism, which means people are working more. And if they're working more and they're present, obviously you have the opportunity to make more money. Increase brand loyalty, which I talked about. So you see 30% higher margins, 28% higher revenue. Organizations have seen double their net income. And again, with the absenteeism, the opposite, a 90% increase in employee retention. So the fact of the matter is, from both the people side, because a lot of this work leaders look at as soft, meaning it's only focused on people and how they think. And what is that going to do for my pockets? What's in it for me? Well, if you don't have people working for you, and if those people aren't there, and when they are there, they're stressed out and they're sick, then they're not going to be doing their job as well as they could be or should be, which means you're going to be putting more money into healthcare and to mental health care. You're going to be paying higher premiums. You're going to be paying more for turnover and recruiting, which means you need more HR people, probably more HR systems. So the fact of the matter is the financial impact is positively influenced by the human capital impact first. These are things that companies large and wide and global and domestic have experienced from being more neuro-inclusive.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, what would you say, one, to companies that are looking to be more neuro-inclusive? Where do they start? And then, what would you say to autistic individuals or neurodivergent people who are looking for a job? What should they be looking for in companies?
So where can companies go?
Like, what are the first steps?
First step is contact me. But outside of that first step, There's a framework that I have written about in my first book called RACE, RACE. Recognize, acknowledge, cultivate, and engage. So the first step is the R, to recognize who and where you are. This can be at the organizational level. It could be at the individual level. It could be Rachel Inc. It could just be Rachel intern. Doesn't matter. So recognize who and where you are. Who is your personal values or your organizational values, your personal mission statement or your organizational mission statement. Who are you? What are your principles? What are your core values as an organization? And then to understand where you are. Where are you on this journey? Now that you've decided to take this journey, where are you on the path? Do you have neurodistinct people working with and for you and that you're aware of? Do you have them now? You most likely do. 30% of the current workforce is identified as neurodistinct. You already have them. Have you spoken to them? Have you contacted them? What's their experience? Like, where are you in this journey? Are you just beginning? Or have you tried this before and you had some success or you had some failure and now you're trying again? Where are you on the journey of becoming more neuroinclusive? And there are processes that, if you work with people like myself, facilitate that process, but that's what it is. Because if you don't understand those two things, nothing else really matters. Because you can't acknowledge something, which is the second step, unless you recognize it first. And you can't cultivate education, which is the third step, if you don't know or understand what knowledge you're trying to seek. And then you can't engage, which is the fourth step. You can't engage unless you have the right knowledge. And you can't get the right knowledge unless you acknowledge your impact on people. And you can't acknowledge the impact unless you recognize who and where you are. So it's this cycle and it's this ladder up and down. But the first step is to recognize. And then you go through this process, and it's iterative. Some steps will take longer than others. Some steps are more painful than others. Some steps are more fluid than others. Some are more structured. It depends. But that's always the first step that I begin with, without getting granular on the tools and the templates that help get that done. But it's a recognition. The second question is autistic people, what they should be looking for in an employer is one that either overtly or covertly expresses verbally or in writing the fact that they understand and appreciate the fact that people operate and think differently, and that there is a openness and a willingness to embrace and celebrate the different way that people think and operate. And there are multiple ways that an organization can do that, but you should be able to see that within that organization. You should be able to hear that. You should be able to feel that from that organization at some point in time. Mm-hmm. If you can't see it, if you can't hear it, if you can't feel it, it's not there. If you see it, but you don't feel it, keep investigating. If you feel it, but you don't hear it, keep investigating. Like, you should have 2 out of those 3 things within an organization. You should see it, you should hear it, or you should feel it in terms of the level of neuroinclusion. But if you don't get any of that, then you should be moving on with your search. The companies that talk about a community mindset, that are focused on the whole rather than the piece or the part, I highly recommend those organizations as well. And from a granular perspective, I highly recommend organizations that have made not just financial commitments, but philanthropic and actionable commitments to the communities that are most impacted, meaning they are a part of a disability organization or affiliated somehow, some way. They donate money on a regular basis to an organization that you have as an applicant, you have an affiliation with somehow or some way. They have activated, they've been active and have taken action in the community, in the autistic community, the neurodivergent community, consistently. Again, not just because of a pandemic, not just because of a regulation, not just because of a change in administration, things that they have been doing consistently over time and they have a track record. Applicants should also be looking for that in an organization.
Yeah, great tips. All right, Grant, and how can people learn more about you?
So I'm out on LinkedIn. I don't do a lot of other social media, much to the dismay of people around me. They're like, you should be on all of this. And I can only focus on one social media platform at a time. So I'm on LinkedIn, my website, compliance2community.com. I'll provide all of my links in my link tree. My link tree has all of my writings and podcasts and these things that people can see and hear, and my books. I'll provide that so you can have it in the show notes as well. But I'm on LinkedIn, and you can find me on my website, www.compliance2community.com. But my link tree is what I use a lot because it has everything there. My bio, my books, my voice, my writing, all of that will be there as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, getting real raw with your personal life. And I think all of your advice for companies will be really useful for people who want to expand their reach and be more neuro inclusive. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to Autism Knows No Borders. If you enjoy this podcast and you'd like to support our mission, please take a moment to rate the show and leave a review. You'll be helping us to continue spreading autism awareness and acceptance around the world. Thanks for listening. Take care.